let's start with a report from Kate and Marlene on what they've done with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
We met as our subcommittee and put together a list of things that we think we'd like to ask Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to do research for us. And we tried to prioritize it, knowing that they probably won't have the full 15 hours in this fiscal year, but that they're also interested in doing work for us. So there's even a possibility once they're done with that, we might get another 15. In any case, we created a list of different things that we'd like to see them do with and prioritized it so that they can get to work on the sort of things that need to get done first, but with an eye towards what else we'd like to see if and when they have time. I checked back in with Aaron Vega and he sent the request off to them to sort of formalize that it's happening. But I think I need to, because I haven't heard back from them yet, I need to wait a day or two before sending in our list of information. But the process is moving forward. And I think we should know soon about when they can get started.
Yeah, and the priority items are the, precedent to, other places in Massachusetts, recreational uses that can be allowed, might be allowed. And then we included some other things to have them think about moving forward, like, multi-jurisdictional locations or, environmental justice access, things like that. So, so we pegged them to look for those.
Yeah, and I think with the jurisdictions was also asking them specifically for examples of how it's been done well. So we might even have models to look at. And the last thing is, hopefully, if we get to the point and we decide it would be useful to have a product to show the city council, like, if rather than talking about precedent review, showing them some things that have been done before, they might be able to do a kind of presentation for us that would help us with our final report. Here's the soccer player.
Great. Okay, any questions for Kate and Marlene? All right, since Jeff Horan has arrived, I think what we're going to do is go right to Bridget Likely and then to Josh Knox to talk about their concerns as abutters and actually on-site users of Whiting Street Reservoir. So Bridget, would you like to go first, please, and tell us your thoughts on all of this?
Sure. So the New England Trail has had a license agreement with Holyoke Waterworks to allow the presence of the trail through Whiting Street Reservoir since officially 2014 is when that license agreement was finalized. The trail itself was not actually put on Whiting Street until 2017, that summer, I believe. And so the trail's existence has been pretty new to the reservoir itself, though it's always abutted the trail prior to that. And it was originally moved on really for a safety issue because before that, I was just going along the road and it really was not ideal. And so we were very excited to work with Holyoke Waterworks to get that license agreement and have the trail's presence. And it's been a big improvement for us to have the trail there and have a more formal connection to Mount Tom State Reservation through the reservoir. And we're very much hoping to continue that. We have across the street is the parking area where our hikers tend to park. We did have, I think, an attempt in the past to get more formalized parking there. And I think the neighbors at the time were not open to that. And so right now there's just that pull out and then you have to go across the street, which is normally very busy. So if the reservoir were to move towards more of a recreation focused use, we'd love to see more formalized parking, a crosswalk across 141 that allows folks to more safely enter the reservoir. But we have, very high use and very high support in that area for using the trail there and for accessing Mount Tom via the reservoir. I know both within the community and, you know, in the wider state area and Northeast region that comes and uses the New England Trail. So we can certainly provide community support from the hiking perspective for recreational use of the reservoir. In terms of changing, you know, land ownership or management, we'd be happy to work with anyone, you know, who takes on management of the trail. We're used to working with, you know, land that's conserved for both recreation and for wildlife management. We know Mass Wildlife is right across the street and the trail goes to their wildlife management area. We work for them to host a trail through that. So we're open to, you know, aligning with whatever use is settled on for the reservoir, but we are very interested in keeping the trail's presence there.
Okay, questions, anyone?
Oh, I was curious how long, what kind of a process, or, you know, was it a long negotiation? You know, how long were you guys working with like Waterworks to?
It was a pretty long process. We did get the mayor directly involved and get his support in order to get access, because at the time, I think the feeling was that even though it wasn't, you know, a directly used online reservoir, it was still there as that backup. If, you know, that sentiment has changed, then, you know, maybe it's less a serious issue that the trail is there now. But at the time, it did take a lot of community support and direct support from the mayor in order to get that license agreement finalized.
Let me ask one then, Bridget, do you see any issues with having the trail use the reservoir circumferential path for the hike? I am assuming you're going from 141 sort of north and then hooking up with where?
Yeah, so I should have provided a map, and I can absolutely do that as a follow-up so you guys can more clearly see how it relates to the reservoir. But you do go along straight away, and a very small part of the circumference of the reservoir before it cuts off into the woods there and then goes up into Mount Tom. So it uses really a very small amount of the actual reservoir path, but it does align for a ways. And so we did get permission to have blazing intermittent along that path until that cut away.
It actually goes up the old entranceway to the reservoir before the new one was. Yeah.
Yep.
So we're going around the reservoir where those two stone pillars are. That was the original entranceway to the reservoir. And it's like a Jeep road. It goes up there and it cuts off on what we used to use and still use as a bike trail. So it, you know, and then it goes to the north into where it actually always went up to Mount Tom. I believe. I think that's right.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
Yeah.
Kip, you had your hand up.
I was just going to ask what the term of your license is, like how much longer you have that agreement?
That's a great question. Let me see if I can pull it up and see if there's a length specified on that license agreement.
I just wondered whether it was like 5 years or 50 years. I mean, just curious.
It is 5 years. Yep. So next year would be a renewal.
Renew
Oh, what-
next year.
Have you guys started, since the last agreement took you guys so long to negotiate? Have you guys talked to them at all about?
We haven't talked to them. I just met the new superintendent, Matt Smith, met last year about another issue entirely. And we worked very well together. So, you know, I think on his end, he's very willing to cooperate. I'm not so sure about the commission itself, but that raises a good point.
You,
Eight,
So I guess two things. One thing that I wonder whether there's any conflict on how it's been dealt with at this point. I mean, I know along the trail, from my understanding is along the trail, dogs are generally allowed to hike with hikers on the trail. but they are not allowed around the reservoir. How did you figure out how to balance that? Or is that? part of
Yeah,
the-
so we do have that posted on our website, about, where dogs are allowed on the trail. So that's the case for Whiting Street Reservoir, as well as we do go through Quabbin Reservoir farther up north. And so we try to make that as clear as possible. And I think, obviously signage within the reservoir alludes to that. So that's kind of the mitigation effort we do on our end.
The other question I had is, I know that one of our previous guests had talked about the potential of money being available through the Park Service because they're trying to promote NET. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I mean, money for maintenance, what would you be looking?
I feel like people can correct me if I'm wrong. I felt like there was even the suggestion that if they're trying to promote the NET, there might even be, trailhead, maybe there are funds for trailhead or something like that, that might parking issue and other, maybe
Yeah, so
That's-
as a national trail, we do receive federal funding. We get a small amount every year for maintenance and projects, and we can apply for specific grants within the National Park Service for projects like trailhead improvements or parking. And obviously we pursue those avenues. We also use state grants. So yeah, there is money available consistently. It's a very small amount, but we can pursue larger projects on a case-by-case basis. So if we wanted to do things like parking improvement or trailhead improvement, we could definitely tap Park Service funding.
if you were to apply for larger funds of money, is there a way that is there a way that a larger concerted effort among various local stakeholders would be helpful to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the more community support we can get, the better. We like to work collaboratively on land protection and improvement projects.
It just seems like there are so many, if it were to be possible to increase passive uses, it seems like the more ways that can be done with all the players, and I think all the players might be interested, but few of the players have access to much money. And if NPS could be called upon for that, is there a way to find out more about like what might be the parameters of what would be possible?
I mean, I think, it largely depends on what specifically you're pursuing. Are you looking for parking? Are you looking for signage? And that kind of opens up different project funds and grants. But we can certainly have a larger conversation about it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like for sure parking is an issue, but if there's opportunities for trailhead funding, depending on how this process continues, maybe the trailhead is of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the other side of things, another funding source we tap a lot is the Recreational Trails Program grant, which is a statewide grant that's dispersed through Department of Conservation and Recreation. And one of the things that elevates the status of a project that applies to that fund is high connectivity trails. So the New England Trail is always considered very high connectivity trail because it's long distance. And so the more we can highlight things like that when we pursue funds, the better.
Bridget, this is Jeff Horan. I know when Fish and Wildlife Service was here and they talked about park engagement and engaging others. And, again, it doesn't sound like the various partners have any plans for enhancing the trails that are there or things like expanded trailheads or expanded access. Are you, does AMC or Friends of Conti or any of those kind of overarching groups have plans in the works or thoughts for things that they would like to do to improve access or continuity of some of these, really very nice resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we always have overarching goals for that. And a lot of it kind of depends on opportunities that arise. So I would say right now, there's a lot of opportunities arising around infrastructure and transportation and things like that. And so we have had calls recently with the Conti about how we can work together and sort of pursue things from a landscape perspective. But, specific projects obviously, need to be highlighted if those funds come up. So we definitely are talking about it in a bigger sense, but I think the next step is more focused. We have the funds or the opportunity, where are we going to put those funds towards?
Right, and just a follow up to that. So if, as those discussions are ongoing, who do you go to in the city of Holyoke, for instance, to get input? Where is it easiest for you to get input so we can engage in that process?
Yeah, so I often go to, is it Yanni is his name?
Yanni Glogauer.
Yeah, so I just connected with him recently, and he's really who I collaborate with in terms of, a citywide effort regarding the trail, but I also work, with the specific land managers. So like I said, Mass Wildlife has property in Holyoke that relates to the trail, as does DCR. And also, with the conservation, like Kestrel also obviously has a stake in a lot of conservation issues in Holyoke. So, Yanni is probably who I go to get that city focus on, but then I also work directly with the agencies.
And just to follow on a little bit with that, when you work in other areas like this, are there usually one group that picks up and coordinates these kind of, as you know, in this area, there's an awful lot of interlacing lands from a number of departments and agencies and private lands. And so have you seen a particularly good model that might help bring these various groups together toward, an overarching plan, or, a way to determine best future needs?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, people have really gone back to their open space and recreation plans. I know Holyoke has done one within the past couple of years, but I know that's really what a lot of towns could go to reference and give themselves goals to work towards. That's probably my main answer. I think on it more though.
Thank you.
Okay, at this moment, are there any other questions for Bridget? Then let's give Josh Knox. Josh, you're going to have to unmute yourself. A moment to talk about trustees of reservations projects in the area and any plans they might have for future, or ways they might cooperate with other groups in the area. Josh?
Hello, friends. Thanks for the invitation. As you probably know, the trustees have 3 properties in Holyoke. 2 are in the general vicinity to Whiting Street Reservoir. Dinosaur Footprints is down the hill on Route 5. The water that's on the north side of Dinosaur Footprints is the drainage that comes from the property, Eric Sear's property, which in turn comes from, the drainage from the reservoir in that whole area. So there's at least a hydrological link there, even though it's cut off by 91. And then of course we own Little Tom Mountain, which is just to the north and I suppose a little bit east of Whiting Street Reservoir. I believe, Sue, you asked about, or should I refer to you as chairwoman, asked about plans. We don't have any current plans, upcoming, which are different than the plans which we've had for some time, which are to maintain the property for public use and enjoyment. Right now, the access is through Mount Tom State Reservation. There have been many different plans over the years since we acquired the property, and many things have changed over those years. At the moment, there is not reliable, safe access through any other means except for Mount Tom State Reservation, which is where we direct visitors to access our property through. And we do maintain that trail system with a small bit of entrance signage at the intersection of the Knox Trail, which is the same word as my last name, but has no relation to me.
Not yours.
Pure coincidence.
Oh,
The intersection of Knox Trail and what we call the Woodland Trail on our property. I'd be happy to talk to other related concerns, but I think that answers the question that was put to me.
Do you, so, a lot of our conversations have been trying to figure out how if there's an opportunity somehow to collectively think through all of these pieces as opposed to thinking of them as, silos and, isolation, but how they support or work to benefit each other somehow here.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel about that?
Well, we've worked together as a member of a loose group that at least we've referred to as the Mount Tom Partners. I don't know if anyone else who's joined these meetings refers to it as such. I think they do, which includes the various landowners on the mountain. We haven't met for 4 years, quite a while. But there was a period of time where we were meeting fairly regularly to try to address some of the issues. It seems like in recent past, there were concerns regarding the quarry, the ski area, the gate, what we refer to as the yellow gate, various vandalism, other folks using various properties in illegal manners, and trying to get a shared understanding of what's permitted and not permitted. We did come out with a agreed upon set of sort of rules and regs across the various properties. For example, it's the trustees' policy to allow hunting on any property where it's, where it can be legal, except when neighboring property owners, don't allow it. Little Tom probably isn't a property where hunting would be appropriate anyway, given the proximity of 91. There's not much of the property that could be safely hunted, but we agreed to have hunting not permitted because it's not permitted on the state reservation, et cetera. So that's one example. Another example is mountain biking. I'm aware that Mr. Craven just referred to mountain biking. It was at the request of the state reservation, which does not allow mountain biking, that we and the other members agreed to not allow mountain biking on our properties, to make enforcement easier. So not to say those things can't change, but that's an example of the type of collaboration and joint approach that we were taking. I'll also mention that there was an interest in engaging Holyoke Gas and Electric in these discussions because they also, of course, own property on the mountain at this point. And they maintain some infrastructure in the area. we were interested in seeing if they would have any capacity and willingness to put in some cameras, especially for that yellow gate. It was our understanding that they do have they do have the capacity to do that. They do have that infrastructure there that could be relatively easily put to use. We have not had any productive conversations with them to date. They have not taken us up on any offers to talk about that, or it hasn't advanced for one reason or another. Not to say that maybe we just haven't asked the right person. But I haven't been attending any of these previous meetings, so perhaps this has already been covered. But there are obviously some challenges on all of these properties with, let's say, visitation, which is not family friendly, and which is not necessarily law abiding. We have not seen very many issues on our properties. We have seen some illegal hunting, regardless of whether it's allowed on our property. There was someone who was doing some baiting, which is not allowed in the state. But other than that, we've seen passive recreational use, which is what we promote on our property. Did that address your question?
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, I've got one for you. Do you still have any sort of copies of that agreement list that you perhaps did 4 or 5 years ago?
Sure, and I don't see why that couldn't be provided to you.
I think it would be very helpful to us.
Right. Who sort of led that?
The trustees was certainly a leader in
Trustees.
that effort. The Holy Boys and Girls Club at a certain point in the history here, which again has taken many twists and turns, were active in this collaboration. I'm sure everyone on the call knows they've recently made other choices, but yeah.
Of course, that's all still very much up in the air. There's no final answer to those situations.
Sue, will there ever be a final answer to those situations?
I think there will be.
Okay.
There will be. The State Department of Recreation and Conservation is working on that. And I think they will come to some sort of solution in the not too distant future.
Cool.
Any other
Josh, what-
comments, questions? Kate?
Yeah, Josh, one of the things that we're trying to figure out, and this is a piece of what we may be asking for from the Pioneer Valley Planning in terms of precedent review is, if we're figuring out if it might be useful to have a more organized interaction and working together among the various partners, is your sense, given what had happened with this informal group, that it would be good to build on that directly, or better to just try to start from scratch?
I think probably there might be better traction with a new effort.
Thanks.
Okay.
Judiciously put. Thank you.
And so, hey, Josh, and thanks for coming. So who do you think is appropriate to lead that? Do you think if you were to convene those landowners, who would be best to do that?
Should be Josh. He's got the right name. I'm kidding.
There are many trails in this area. I think it depends on what the intention, desired outcomes, to use a different word, purpose, resources, authority of the meeting would be. The meetings that we were in and a part of had to do with gathering landowners together to advance shared concerns and objectives. My guess would be this body has maybe bigger visions or different ideas, or maybe I'm not 100% clear of what this proposed convening would be about. So I'm not sure that I can answer that question, Jeff.
If I can butt in for a moment, Josh, basically, this committee was convened to study all of these questions. And I don't think we have any preconceived notions of what our eventual findings are going to say, other than we are all concerned with the integrity of the water supply. So that all of these ancillary issues and questions are very much new areas for all of us to think about. And the input from people who've worked on any sort of situation like what we're asking you about is really important.
Thank you. It's my thought that all of the landowners would be interested in gathering. There are some. One thing I have not mentioned yet is SBA. I'm sure y'all are familiar with SBA and their interest in the towers on top. And one of the challenges has been they have, I don't know that I probably have heard the number, but I don't remember what it is. It's definitely more than a dozen, might be as many as 50 different contractors that they give access to service the towers up there. That has been a challenge in terms of that gate and keeping that secure.
Josh, what is SBA for dummies like me?
Yeah, I would have to Google it, Harry. It's the name of a
Is it
giant.
registration?
No. It's a name of a giant communications corporation that has an interest in maintaining, leases on for the towers up there at the top.
So they're in charge of all those towers, or so to speak?
Not all of them. GBH has a tower and a facility up there. I think they may be the only other entity, but my knowledge is not comprehensive on that topic.
Yeah, Fish and Wildlife Service also mentioned that was a real issue with the maintenance since they use their road.
Well, right. That's a whole nother issue is going up the ski slopes, going next to the quarry, taking shortcuts. Right. So I haven't answered your question, Jeff, about who might be the appropriate convener. It's possible this body might be the appropriate convener. I don't know. Again, it could be a new mayor might be the right force to inject some energy into this discussion.
It's something called SBA Communications.
Yeah. Yes. So we were dealing with a gentleman called Mitch West. I could look in my phone what the current contact is. It's not Mitch West anymore. We're really close to having SBA Communications pay for a new yellow gate. And as one of my colleagues likes to say, is the root of at least the majority of all problems. Communication problems led to a breakdown in that that project. That's why there's those holes covered by plywood near the yellow gate, because SBA walked away from the project.
A new player.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll allow me to consult my phone brain, I can tell you who the current contact is. No. Right, so we have Western Mass News. They're involved. I still have Mitch West as a contact. Oh, Stephen Roth. He's the new site manager.
You have a phone number for him?
I have 413-417-6966. That's 413-417-6966. And I have 860-539-4920. I could type this in the chat if you want.
Dan?
So would it be helpful for me just to type it in the chat, or I could say it again, 860-539-4920.
939 4920.
Yep.
Affirmative. And then S, like Sierra or Stephen, Roth, like his last name, at SBA Site. Sierra, Bravo, Alpha, Sierra, ITE.com. Anyway, we could spend some minutes with me sending you reading you over the Zoom, my contacts, but there's one at least.
That'd be great.
They sound like they might be a very worthwhile person or
Yep.
company for us to get in touch with.
Like I said, it's a little tricky because they did stick out their neck and invest some dollars, by their calculation, 30 grand, which they had to walk away from without anything to show for it. So I don't know how interested they're going to be in. I don't know. How would I know? But
There's
there's
only
that.
one way we'll find out.
Yep.
Okay. Other thoughts, other questions?
I'd like to ask Josh if maybe he has a kind of an overall vision for how all these stakeholders might be integrated better than they are now, from an actual like physical perspective, and how the properties might be, how your property might benefit from a more integrated approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have one thought. Would it be appropriate? I know who everyone on the call is except for the phone caller. Does anyone know who that is? Are they, I guess it's not my place to ask who they are, but maybe the chair could ask who they are.
Well, I think I know who they are, and they are conservation people.
Okay. Maybe you could ask them, Madam Chair, to mute, because they come on every now and then with some background noise.
Well, they are muted.
Not on my
Oh,
screen.
phone call up at the top. I have no idea who that is.
So Madam Chair, maybe we should ask the guests to sign in, for the meeting, just in the chat.
Okay, then. 1
Please sign in, guests.
413-210-7621. Would you please identify yourself and let us know who you are?
Yeah, they just muted themselves.
Oh, they're gone.
They're unmuted again.
No,
Still there, but with no phone.
no, they're still there.
Sounded like they were trying to say something.
If you unmute yourself, perhaps you can tell us who you are.
My name's Brendan Kuntz.
And do you represent anything, Brennan, or are you part of this
Nope.
meeting tonight?
Nope,
Just
simply
an-
a bored single male that's listening.
No more information is necessary, Brendan.
All right,
Thank
great.
you. Glad to have you aboard.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll mute myself now. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you, Brendan.
thank you.
I guess if he's on the phone, maybe he doesn't know who this is. So this is Josh again. Maybe I should preface my speaking with saying who I am, of the trustees. I think maybe more interesting, Kip, thanks for the question, would be to reflect for a second on what the various visions have been, although I know you know some of this, so I'll keep this very short. But of course, when we acquired the property, there was a vision for a recreational hub, a visitor center of sorts at the old ski buildings, which now no longer exist. There has been a vision at various times for things like a PVTA stop, a recreational encouragement, enhancement still through one of the entrances, whether it's the NET entrance, the Whiting Street Reservoir entrance, or accessing it through Mount Tom State Reservation. At the moment, to be honest, the vision is to provide access to folks who are hiking, as we are on the state reservation map. We are our trails are, for some intents and purposes, I suppose, part of the state reservation trail network. There's so many there's so many complexities. I think I'm not sure that the trustees, I'm not sure if we're asking me personally as a resident of 40 Morgan Street or as a representative of the trustees, but certainly from the trustees' perspective, I don't think we're at this point visioning in a grand sense for what could or is likely to happen in this neck of the woods. I think it seems fairly likely that things will continue more or less how they are for some time. At various times, we have been interested in being a part of having there be more tourism, recreation, passive sort in this area, and happy to be a partner to that. And we have always been excited about how proximate these properties are to many, many people and folks who are sometimes called underserved or, don't otherwise have access to a lot of open space. We have run programs for example, youth in Holyoke. We're not currently actively programming our property, however. Hopefully that answers your question, Kip.
Why not actively programming, Josh? Is that funding? Is it capacity? Is it complexity?
That's a good question. I think that's above my sort of level in the organization to answer. I don't really know why that focus shifted. I'm sure both of those two issues played a role. Funding and capacity.
I can just jump in for a second and
Great.
just
Thanks,
add
Bridget.
my perspective. Yeah. just saying that, along the whole stretch of the trail, we really do put a large focus on Holyoke, due to, as Josh said, the fact that it's near so many people, and it does, it's a way to serve an underserved population in terms of getting them access to the outdoors. We do have a paid youth trail crew that runs out of Holyoke. We partner with Mass Hire and the Holyoke Youth Works program every summer and hire a group of teenagers from Holyoke to come out on the trail with us. And so we do try to put our best effort into working with Holyoke as kind of a focus area for the trail.
Could you repeat who you said you're working with the teenage trail workers?
Yeah, Mass Hire. They have employment centers all around the state, but there is one specifically in Holyoke. Gladys LeBron Martinez used to run it. She just retired from it this past winter, but they have a summer youth job program, and so we partner directly with them to recruit youth.
You might know, Kip, that we used to run a summer youth jobs program, and maybe it was just one summer, maybe Bridget, before you came on board, that actually we were the partner for what was at that time called the Trail Runner program, where we had 2 youth, older, it was sort of perfect. They had aged out of our program and then could do this Trail Runner program, reaching out to users of the NET and whatnot, but then things changed.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, do the trustees have a position on filling the quarry?
Yes, we have a public position opposed to the, in support of DCR's position on the matter. That's the trustees' position is to, this came up, our formal position was issued in response to this running out of the clock issue around the property transfer of the former, I guess what we now refer to as the former Boys and Girls Club property. And we were in favor of granting a waiver of the local review period so that DCR could acquire the property within their remaining time to do so. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. But there's no, well, I guess I'll follow up. So there's no stated position beyond that, directly to the quarry. I mean, that's a way, that's an indirect, that's an indirect statement.
Well, I guess.
But I understand. I don't want to put, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just.
I don't know what would be considered a public official position, or what is a internal position, so I think I'm going to leave it at that.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Well, are there any more questions for either Bridget or Josh at this point?
The only one is, I guess, would you guys, we may want to, talk again at some point. So could we call you back?
Yes, absolutely.
At this point, you have to run it through my supervisor, but I'm happy to run it through my supervisor and see if it's a yes, but I don't see why not. Something else that occurred to me to say, just to add on to what I guess both Bridget and I were saying earlier, is the trustees certainly supports a vision of, having this be a more functional, there's a certain like Jane Jacobsonian dysfunction around that area of the Yellow Gate. we don't have the eyes on the street. And we have a certain stagnant flow going through there that is not conducive to, the highest and best use for the properties. It's also, a tremendous asset for the city, just this whole area. I mean, I would be remiss to not take the opportunity to mention what I'm sure everyone here knows, which is just what an incredible jewel for Holyoke these properties are. And the fact that there are, although they're in different ownership, there are, majority of them, including the one owned by the city, are aligned in, their interest in having them remain in conservation and open for passive recreation. And we certainly would support any effort to continue to move in that direction and to encourage its use and address some of these challenges. To Kate, your point, I mean, I don't think it would take a lot of investment to address these challenges. It's just
Wherewithal.
yeah, some kind of wherewithal that hasn't yet been brought to bear. It has seemed within reach a number of times, even in my short career, and has sort of slipped through the fingers a couple times.
Could I, that said, ask both of you to think about the costs involved in such a thing? It seems to me we would probably need something in the way of park rangers or area rangers, signage, the new gate, and so forth. And that, of course, is always a sticking point for any group. And I'm going to mute myself at this point for a second so I can take this call.
Yeah. So I think what Sue Ellen's referring to is the notion that it's always, easier for the city to think about how to access capital money than operating money. And a lot of this, a lot of the costs, or many of the costs, not all, but many, would be operating costs as opposed to capital cut a ribbon kind of thing. So
I if you don't mind me going first, Bridget, I'm not so sure that's true. I mean,
Okay.
the trustees operates, many properties that have no staff presence, except for coming by, on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. We have many properties which are volunteer managed. We have volunteer trail stewards. I know for a fact that there are quite a lot of people volunteering their time informally, picking up trash, whatever, on many of these properties we're talking about. I think the biggest challenge is inertia. And we've seen this on some of our other properties. It's been going in a certain way. And it is in some ways a capital expense to say, boom, this is the new vision, this is the new reality, this is and then, it takes a while for everyone to get the message, for new patterns of usage, behavior to get into place. It's possible that initial period might not be 6 months. It might be 3 to 5 years to sort of get, I don't know what metaphor would be appropriate. Get the train to go on a different track. Maybe would be a good metaphor. Get the trolley. We should use a trolley as a metaphor for these projects. Or the skier. Anyway, but I don't think it's necessarily the case that we need a ranger. That would certainly be some substantial resources. I think anyway, that'd be my first attempt to address that.
So Josh, Eric Sewer brought up, I think it was Eric brought up, he thought the possibility of closing Mountain Park Road, just beyond the apartments / condos there. He felt like that would be, again, it would just be closed at night, but to have a gate lower down is, based on your experiences there, is that, but would that be potentially helpful?
Well, I've been in meetings with Mr. Soar where he's brought that up in the past. And when he has brought that up in the past, I'm not the only one who's said, well, that could work. And it still gives us the same problem we've been having with the Yellow Gate, which is there are a number of entities who have legal right to go through, even at night, and do not have a good track record of closing the gate behind them, leaving it locked, etc. So maybe, I guess, would be my answer to that. I mean, again, we almost had if Eric's so interested in new gates, it boggles the mind why he scuttled this effort to install a new gate, which was in hand. The funds were in hand, the construction was in progress, and then it was abandoned because, as far as my information holds, he said, huh, that's interesting. I own that property. And there won't be a gate there. So I think without accountability, which many of the partners have suggested could come through videography, or, I mean, there's been other suggestions, electronic key system for going in and out. So every time anyone goes in or out, there's a recording of who that was. And now we're talking about substantial dollars, to install that kind of system. But to address the question directly about a gate closer to Castle Hill, maybe.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not aware of all the ins and outs here. So that's part of the reason why we're asking these questions, Josh. We don't know, we haven't been there on the ground here, although some of us have, I'm sure, have heard some of these stories, but so thanks for the insight you can provide.
Sure. I hope I'm not speaking out of school or unprofessionally, but I'm sure you can sense there have been some frustrations along the ins and the outs.
Bridget, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I will really just second what Josh said in terms of the funding and how I also see it as mostly operational costs. We have 95 miles of trail of the NET in Massachusetts, and I'm in theory like the one staff person assigned to it, and I'm certainly not the person on the ground maintaining it. That's entirely our volunteers, and we have a lot of great volunteer support that manages those kinds of efforts, including Albert has, I know, helped on the NET a time or two. So I don't think that should be a barrier to an effort like this.
Bridget, as a trail planner, do you have any particular wisdom on where the most appropriate trailhead or access point would be if you were, for the Mount Tom area in general? Again, there may not be, one answer for that, but if it's something you've looked at, and being a trail planner, I suspect you might have some insight.
I would have to go back and look at maps, but I think Josh had referenced things like a PVPC, hub or something at one point was in the plans. And I think more and more transportation is a key element in recreation, and access is a key element. So more than anything, thinking about a trailhead in terms of where does it allow people the most access.
And apparently that can be controlled.
It occurs to me, Jeff, that a maybe more productive way for me to have answered your question would be if for you to circle back to Eric and inquire of him if we're talking about gates, maybe he could elaborate the history of gates and what might be more or less successful or more or less agreeable to him about gates, considering there have been efforts around gates which have not been fully successful in the past.
Well, that
Thank
is
you.
an interesting thought. So, Harry, are you listening?
I am.
Okay, could you circle back to Eric and ask that question?
Okay. I will.
I mean, I don't want to seem like I'm, pointing fingers at Eric. He's got a lot of his own concerns, and this has been challenging for everyone. His gate is smashed like every other day. I mean, he's had significant vandalism issues, and could be that the SBA folks didn't ask. I don't know the whole story, so that's why I think the appropriate course of action is to ask Eric. Now, we all know that he isn't necessarily always verbose in his reply, but we can always just ask.
Well, he has been in to speak with us. Harry Craven was his contact at the time. So we will go back to that way of reaching him and just let him know that the gate question has come up again and get him to restate his feelings so that we have it very firmly in our notes. And thank you for the suggestion. Appreciate it, Josh.
You're welcome. I'm always interested to hear all sides, of the issue. It's not so productive when it's hearsay, this person said this, that,
Exactly.
I don't have Eric's side of the story, so it would be helpful to get it.
Any other questions for Josh or Bridget right now? Well, thank you very, very much for being with us. We've really appreciated your input and your company tonight. And obviously, as we discuss what we've learned so far about the area and the abutters, the neighbors, and issues that have been brought up, we will be circling back to you if we have further questions. We will be getting ready to start planning our public hearings. And we may need to ask some questions before we do that. So thank you for agreeing to let us. And on that note, I'm going to ask Marlene if she got in touch with Bob Como about a possible tour of the reservoir.
Sure. So I did speak with him, and he would be more than happy and willing to do a tour with us, planned for 2 hours. He gave me a few appointments that he's got already that he can't do, but in general, he is open any day, anytime, happy to do it, love to do it. And so I wanted to, the times that he seems to be booked are weekends, at least over the next month or so. So depending on everybody's calendar, you should give me some ideas on what your interest or availability is. He's thrilled that we asked.
Madam Chair, before we let our guests go, if they need to leave, do you want to entertain questions from the public through you?
Well, we certainly could. who do we, let's see, Brendan is still here. And it looks like,
Bernice and Albert are still here as well.
yeah, I'm looking, I don't.
They're
That's
here.
my dog
Okay, I
Ginger.
see them. Do any of you all have questions for our guests tonight or for us? Brendan, Bernice, Albert? And you will have to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
To it.
Yeah.
The one question I have tonight is I'd really like to hear more from Hoyok Gas and Electric. They're, as you know, a major player up there, and what their plans are in relation to DCR and et cetera. Yeah. The other item I like to just put out there for the trail system, Old East Hampton Road. It's a regular parking lot. I don't know who actually owns the property, whether that's still a legal street or not, but it is the only place that's we can park safely. And like to see some sort of plan for that property sooner than later. So I leave that with you folks to talk about.
If I could just actually build on that, if you reach out to Michael Curtin at HG&E, he's the one that deals with all the land development, and this is his area. Jim Lavelle always refers to Mike whenever I have a question about land stuff with HG&E.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
Brendan, can you spell his last name for me?
I think it's C-U-R-T. It's not like the curtain, but that's like as close as I can get it. You know what? I'll forward an email to the organization tomorrow morning with Michael's contact on it.
That'd be great. Or I could call Jim LaValle.
Yeah, I mean, Jim
Thanks, Mike.
doesn't always answer, but yeah, Mike Curtin is definitely your guy.
Okay, Brendan, that is terrific information, and
Aren't
we
you
will
glad you
follow it
came?
up. Josh, you had something else you wanted to say?
Just building on that, I think in the same way that Harry's going to circle back with Eric, as we're talking with Mr. Curtin, I think it'd be worthwhile to officially inquire of them about their perspective and willingness to support with power and communications in this area, to support having cameras, for example. That's one thing I would say. And then secondly, I just want to respond, Sue, to your comment and say thank you. We, the trustees, appreciate being asked, and we're certainly excited about any efforts that can be made to better protect and support recreation in these areas. So
Thank you.
as I sit on a similar board to this, I know you all are volunteering and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Always good to hear.
Kate, you have a question?
I wanted to go back to the tour question. I don't know whether, is it possible for us to try to figure that out here and now? I found
Sure.
the email that you had sent about his possible times, and it
Well,
looks like
those times were actually times he was busy.
he couldn't do it, right? I'm assuming given the mix of people here this weekend is probably better. And it seems like he enjoys giving the tours on Saturday morning. But I noticed he doesn't have anything scheduled May 1st or May 8th.
I'm not usually around on weekends. I'm not usually around on Saturdays.
Well, maybe it's more a question of then.
Could you speak up louder?
Yeah, sorry. If it's not so obvious, then would it be best for us to send ideas to you, or do you want to set up like a doodle poll for people to choose?
I could do a
preset
doodle.
times?
I could set up a doodle poll and send it out.
That might be easier, especially if you build it around times that you could do, then the rest of
Okay.
us can weigh in.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Hey, Sue Ellen, could we get a golf cart and you could come with us?
I don't think a golf cart will go on that path, to tell you the truth, at least not based on my last trip around the res.
Sure,
Lots of turkeys and things, but
it's all puffed up now. You can go around easily.
Friends, I'm being summoned. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go as well.
Appreciate
Thank you
Josh,
so much.
thank you, Bridget.
And then we're set.
okay, so Marlene will follow up on
I'll do a doodle poll.
and I don't know who asked the question, but one of the things we will need to do is make a couple of suggestions. One to the water department as to whether or not they would be willing to work with the golf course on water for parking or parking for water. That had come up as well, and I think we don't want to forget that. Anything else that we want to talk about tonight?
Do we want to think about who do we have at our next meeting, or do we have anybody?
We have not decided to have anyone at another meeting. Now, do we want to see if we can get someone from Holyoke Gas and Electric to come
was
into the
thinking that.
next meeting?
That's what I was thinking.
And they're probably-
Okay, I'll give Jim Lavelle a call and see who we can get. Anybody else we'd like at the next meeting?
Well, it sounds like also SBA Communications is a pretty key player that we haven't included in our considerations. So you have the Stephen Roth phone number
Yeah.
and such for them.
That was SBA, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's SBA. I'm not, although I may not have heard it right.
Okay, I made some notes. I'll find it. Okay, I will see if I can set them up for the first May meeting. And we do have to start thinking about how we want to handle public meetings, because we have to decide how much information we already have from our abutters, from the water department, from what we've learned about laws governing water use and land use, and see where we, or how we want to go from here. So let me throw that open for some quick discussion.
And then are they virtual, or how do we,
Well, I think we're still on virtual. I don't see how we
Okay.
can plan anything else yet. May 4th would be the next meeting. And then after that, I don't even trust myself to add at this point. Looks like May 18th.
Is there a possibility we want to take a break from getting input and just speak among ourselves about, what we think we're accomplishing through the input and what we want to get from I think it's been very helpful. I'm not trying to say that at all. I just wonder if it's worth us, speaking to each other to just understand what we've gotten out of this, and is that giving us as a committee any kind of future view of, what we're moving toward.
Jeff, that was actually my thought. And I did not realize we'd want to talk to anybody else before we did that. My plan had been to use all of May, just both the meetings in May, just to talk about what we've learned, put it in some kind of order so that we were all thinking in the same kind of format. And then after we had done that, think about how we wanted to handle public meetings. So I am in total agreement with what you've said. I think, and we all need, because we've been at this now for several months to go over a lot of this material and see how we want to handle it. And the question is, do you think we should do that before we call on these other two individuals? Or should we call on them first and then do our in-house discussions?
So since I brought it up, I think I'd rather us talk first, but I don't think it's that crucial either way.
Well, I'd kind of just, I'm with you. I'd rather talk, and we might have better questions if we do that. What does everybody think?
That sounds fine to me.
Kate has her hand up.
I'd say that also sounds good to me, but my guess, and perhaps perhaps I'll be pleasantly surprised, but my guess is that, particularly with tracking down SBA, it may take longer than we think to get that done, so that we might want to start trying the outreach right now, but be asking them to come at our first meeting in June, if we can reach them.
Oh, we'll find them. One way or another, we'll find them.
Seems like a good suggestion.
Well, then we would go back to my original thinking, which was to use all of May and rehash everything that we've learned so far. Does that suit everybody?
Sure.
Okay, then when I start, there won't be any problem tracking somebody down from HG&E. And I can try to reach this Mike Curtin. Brendan said he was going to email me that contact information.
I think I'd go to the top first and let him.
Well, that's what I would have done. I would have called Jim Lavelle, whom I've known for years.
I would definitely go there and let him assign someone if he let him delegate if he decides that's what he wants to do.
Okay. Okay. And then we'll try to find out how to locate this other outfit and see if we can bring them in as well. And actually, if we go to HG&E, they may know all about these people because they know everything.
Good point. Good point.
So, yep. And Harry, so I took some notes too. So they're a hot mess, but I'll send them to you and you can see if there's anything.
Mine are even worse.
Well, I'll send them to you, and I think it's probably my turn next time. So, but I'll send you what I have.
All right. Dave Moore was
I'll
supposed
tell
to.
you in a minute.
All right.
I'll do a reminder on that.
I'd be happy, Jeff, to get any you have.
May 16th, no, May 18th is actually, oh, wait a minute. Jeff, you're May 4th. May 18th is Dave Moore. June 1st is Terry, and I hope she's back with us by then. June 15th is Marlene.
Since
Okay.
I'm not scheduled for one very soon, if it turns out that somebody is not present when it's their turn, as long as you tell me I should take notes, I'm generally taking some notes and you can call on me.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else for this meeting? Elbert, Bernice, do you have any other questions or thoughts?
I think you pretty much answered it. I agree. You need to just meld this all down in your minds and discuss it amongst yourselves. But I really strongly feel you should talk to HG&E first. They're a big player here. Very big player.
Yes, well, Bernice and I will remember the time we spent on their tie and bond program for researching the mountain and the wetlands up there.
And the thing is, their property is part of the watershed. That's a big factor.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
huge part of the watershed. So,
Okay,
all right.
now for some reason, I'm admitting people back in.
Hey, it's Marlene. Hello.
So,
Oh, you got knocked off, Marlene?
I
Did
did.
get knocked off.
All right.
Okay, Brendan, do you have something else? No, he's gone now. Well, then our next meeting will be May 4th. We will be planning to go back to the beginning, do a quick review perhaps of what we know about the laws and go from there forward. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah, are we inviting Ginny and did I miss all that?
We're not inviting anybody until June,
Okay,
but we'll find them, in the meantime.
okay.
And I guess that's going to be my responsibility. I will take care of that.
Let me know if you want, if I can call anybody, Sue Ellen.
Okay, will do.
And I'll send around a doodle poll.
And I want to thank Kate and Marlene again for all of the work getting this information down to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. And we'll be interested in getting a report from you as soon as you hear back.
Okay.
So,
And just that,
and Marlene, you'll let us know about
the tour.
a reservoir hike.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is, my line of work is transportation. So I used to work at PVTA. So if transportation's an issue, that's an area I can help.
Okay. I had not forgotten that.
I try. I try a lot.
Anything from anybody else? In that case, everybody go eat dinner.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks.
to see you all. And
Good
I
night.
will be in touch and
Night.
let you know what's going
Night.
on with
Night, Harry.
what I'm working on.
Night, guys.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Good
Good night.
night, Harry.